I do have a question that came in by email this morning. So if you do have something that you'd like me to address in the workshop, I would ask that hopefully you can send it in on Thursday. That way it'll give me Thursday night to take a look at it. Sometimes these questions can be pretty in-depth, and so I like to do a little bit of testing and work with it first. That way I can kind of streamline the process for the workshop, kind of save some time for you guys. So if you could, if you do have questions for the workshops, if you could send them in by Thursday, that would really be helpful. But what Frank was asking is he has a question about using an ATM strategy, right? Ninja's ATM strategy inside of Raven. So let me just kind of bring that up. So I'll bring up a DOM here. Right. So as you guys are probably aware, right, you can build an ATM strategy and use it inside of Raven. Right, so I think I built this one last week or 2 weeks ago, just as a test. So let's see, let me bring up Raven here. So I'm going to open up the strategies button on the chart. And there we go. Alright, so if I load up, so I already have Raven running on this chart here. And yeah, that's right, this is a leftover from a couple weeks ago. And so normally when you load up Raven, the default managed trades is set up here. So this is the default, right, with the profit target and the stop loss. And so you could switch this over to an ATM, and you can have Raven execute an ATM, and then the ATM takes over on basically the ATM profits, and the ATM's profits and stop losses take over from there. And so Frank was wondering if there was a way that you could execute like a 2-contract ATM, and if certain conditions occur, certain conditions, like if you could build a certain exit signals in BloodHound, could you use those exit signals to close out a contract from the ATM? And basically the answer to that is, when you fire off an ATM, that's a closed system. So an ATM is driven, with NinjaTrader's ATM logic, and that, as far as I understand, is a closed system. So as far as I understand, there's no way that you can modify an ATM once it's been executed and once it's running. Basically, NinjaTrader takes over from there. So so the answer to Frank's question, I think it's technically impossible to modify or close out any of your ATM strategies, at least automatically. You could close out your contracts manually on the ATM, but that is, let's see, let me close this out here. So if you had if you had Chart Trader running on one of your charts, let me bring up another chart here. So if I turn the Chart Trader on, so I could have Raven running in one chart. So I could have Raven running over here. Actually, let me just go ahead and turn Raven on, and if we're lucky, maybe it'll fire off a trade for us. And then I can show you instead of just talking about it. So let's see what happens here. let me get Raven set up. Let's see, backtest is false. Okay, good. Alright, so we'll see. Oh, here we go. Here's a down bar. So maybe we'll get a trade executed off here. And on this chart here, I have the chart trader turned on. And so if this ATM fires off, you know, you guys are probably aware that you can manually modify your ATM, and so you could manually close out one of your profit targets, or close out one of your contracts on your ATM manually, but there's no way to do that automatically, and there's definitely not a way to do that in Raven. So the bottom line is to Frank's question that no, it's not possible to automatically close out one of your ATM contracts. So I think that kind of takes care of Frank's question. Alright, so Kenji's got a question here. How to write an exit strategy using SI-Renko bars. 5-1. Let's see, exit 2 bars against entering direction. Alright, so I think I got that one. So Kenji wants to build an exit logic when you have 2 bars against the entering direction. So let's put we'll put this chart back on the SI-Renko, or the Pro Renko. So let's put it on the Pro Renko here. Actually, you know what? Here's something I'll show you guys. Here's something I was just kind of playing with last night, and I'll show you this. So we'll kind of get a 2-for-1 question and answer here. So I'm going to use the BackTestRenko, and let's see. So we're going to. Kenji wants to use a 5-1, and let's see. I believe the reversal on a 5-1 is going to be 9. So you notice that in the BackTestRenko, right, you can manually control the reversal size. Whereas on the Pro Renko, let's see, all right, let me have to close out of this, and I'll take this chart over here, and I'm just having to wait for Ninja Trader. There we go. So I'm going to take this chart over here, and I'll switch it to the Pro Renko, and you can see there's no reversal size, right? And that's because it's just the reversal is calculated automatically. So I'm going to switch this to a 5-1, and oh, the reversal is 10. All right. So let me change the reversal on here to 10, so that way they match up. And so what I wanted to show you on the BackTestRenko is actually with wave mode off. So if you're wanting to backtest, you need to turn wave mode off, right? You can see that with wave mode on, that it uses the median Renko style, so you can't backtest with this. Well, you can, but the backtesting is not as accurate when you're backtesting with wave mode on. So we'll turn it off. And just wait for the data to load up. Alright, and let me adjust the bars. There we go. So I don't think I need this chart anymore. And alright, so I'm just going to start from scratch here. So let's add BloodHound onto the chart. some reason my VMware seems to be running kind of slow today. Alright, so we're going to add BloodHound onto the chart. And, oh, no wonder I have the revolution on here. Let me remove that. And let me remove the fibs as well. Alright, that ought to help. Okay, so I have a blank BloodHound on my chart. So let's start working on Kenji's system. So let me name this. So I will give it today's name. And let's see, 2014, and we're January 17. So the simple way to address Kenji's system is we can use the bar direction solver here. And what I want to look for is Kenji wants to identify two bars, essentially two bars in the same direction, or as Kenji put it, two bars against the direction of the trade. But in any case, we're looking for two bars in a row. And right, this percentage setting here, you can see that the percentage, if I add, let me put 5 bars on here, and you see how the output kind of counts up, right? So the output is in a percentage style. So based on the number of bars in the same direction, so let me expand these guys out and make them bigger. So you can see right here, when I get a number of bars in the same direction, right, the output increases. Actually, here's a better spot. So as we get the same, as we count up to 5 bars in a row, we can see the output counts up. So this percentage is kind of an analog style output. A lot of people, I think it's easier to kind of look at this all or none. So when you get 5 bars in a row, you get an output or you don't. So this is a little easier, I think, to look at all or nothing. Alright, so let's set this down to 2. So Kenji's looking for 2 bars in a row. Alright. So before we go any further, actually I'm going to switch this back to wave mode on. So that way it looks like the SI Pro Renko. Alright. And give me a moment. I'm going to remove Raven here, just so that we're dealing, there we go. So now we can have the racing stripes correctly. Alright, so you can see now that when we have 2 bars, right, when we get to the second bar in the same direction, we have a signal here. Right, so this long signal would exit any short positions. So that's the simplest way to do it. Is just build yourself this. It just takes one solver, this bar direction solver, and you just want to set it to look for 2 bars in the same direction. So that that essentially is it. And you don't have to worry. So since this is going to be used for an exit signal, you don't have to worry about all these other long signals here for the entire length of the trend, because this is going to be used as an exit signal, so it's only going to exit you. It won't put you long, right? But what it would do is that if you decided to go, for some reason, if you had logic that decided to go short somewhere in this uptrend, then just remember that this long exit signal would exit that short immediately. So I'll just keep that in mind. And I'm going to add one of my favorite indicators here back on my chart, which is this toolbar. I'm going to put this toolbar on here. There we go. Okay, so here's the second part, answer to what I was going to show you. So if we have this is only kind of necessary, I guess, really with wave mode off. So if you're building a system that you want to backtest and you're using the BackTestRenkos, right? You'll notice that you'll have bars here, like this bar, where there's no body. So we can see that the bar direction solver isn't identifying this bar as an up bar or a down bar, right? Because this bar has no body. So when you have these doji type bars, that bar direction solver doesn't work. All right, this bar direction solver doesn't work when you have a doji like this. So let me switch over and I'll start working on the logic board. So let's see, then we'll just call this a two bar exit. Or actually, I prefer to use the noun verb type naming convention. So I'm going to call this exit dash 2 bar. So let me just throw that existing solver on here. And I should probably name this guy so I know what it's doing. So there we go. It's a 2 bar direction. Plug that in there. Yeah, so we can see the bar direction solver doesn't work when we have these dojis. So we can build our own bar direction solver using the comparison solver here. So let me throw a comparison solver on here. And I'll give this a name. So another 2 bar direction. And it's the comparison solver. So I'm just going to shorten that name up. So let's plug this in here. And so essentially what the bar direction solver is doing is it's comparing the opening price. So it's kind of comparing the opening price, right, to the closing price. And that's how it's determining the bar direction. Pretty simple logic. But when we have a doji, we can't do that anymore. So what we can do is we can compare the previous close. Right, so we'll compare the previous closing price to the next bar's opening price. So that's what we're going to set up here with this comparison solver. So I'm going to compare the closing price, and this will be the closing price of the current bar. So if I back my chart up like this, so indicator A is representing the closing price of, we'll pretend this is the current bar right here with the green triangle, and we're going to compare it to the closing price of 1 bar back. So the closing price, right, of this bar. I'll fatten this up. There we go. And so to do that, to compare to 1 bar back, right, we have to use this displacement. And you'll notice that when we use this closing price, it no longer has a displacement. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the chameleon indicator. So let's scroll down here to SI chameleon, and I'm going to grab the closing price here from chameleon. Just use all the default settings. So we're just using the simple closing price. And now I have this displacement feature, so I can just use a displacement of 1 bar back. So now when we look at this, we can see, right, when we have a down bar, we can see that we're getting a short signal, and an up bar we're getting long signals, just like the bar direction solver would normally do. But now it works with dojis. Okay, so now the next step is we want, 2 of these bars in the same direction. So the next step is we can add the look back. Yeah, we'll add. Oops. Move that up. There we go. So I'm going to connect this into the look back. Connect that into the result. And so for the look back, you can see it has this look back period. But first, I'm going to take this displacement and set it to 0. We don't need a displacement. What this displacement does is it kind of delays. So any signals, right, any data coming into the look back, the displacement, essentially what that's doing is it's delaying the data. So if I put 1, it would delay the data coming in by 1 bar. All right, if I put 5, it would delay any signals or any data coming in by 5 bars. But we don't want any delay. And now the next thing to do is to use the look back period and set that to 2. And now we can see there that on the first bar of a different direction, right, we can see there's no signal. And on the second bar, now there is a signal. So now we can see this is mimicking what the bar direction solver was doing. So if we look, I'll stretch this out here. So let's just look at this reversal point here. So we can see that the bar direction solver, right, is identifying the second bar in the same direction. And whereas this is also, with this look back in here, now it's doing the same thing. And you'll notice whenever this look back period is 2 or greater, right, we have this mode. So this average mode, right, it's kind of, you see how it's looking kind of like what the bar direction solver is doing. So if I increase this to 5, right, you can see the output is stepping up just like it did in that bar direction. And we can also turn that off, right? So now it's, if I use the minimum, we can see the output now is either on or off. So when we get 5 bars in the same direction, 5 up bars, then it gives us a signal on that 5th bar. So let's set this back to 2. That's what Kenji's looking for. So there is 2 different ways to kind of build this, to look for essentially 2 bars in the same direction, and then you can use this as an exit signal. So if, to kind of continue on, if I use this in Raven, and let's see, hold on, I need to back up here first. I need to close this out, so I need to close out BloodHound so it saves all my work back to the file. right? So as soon as I close the interface, it's going to save all this work back to the file. So that saved it back to the file. And so now, when I load that file up into Raven, right, it'll load up that file correctly. So now I can go to File, and there's that file that we were just working in. And I always like to take a look at the logic to make sure that that it's all set up correctly. I like to take a look at the leaders, make sure that the leaders are set up correctly. Sometimes you'll find that, oops, you forgot to leave one of these leaders connected or something like that sometimes. So it's always good just to take a preview look at the logic that you're going to use inside of Raven. So I can hit OK, and then I can load up this exit logic. And then of course I don't have an entry. I don't have any entry to put in here, so this is not going to run. This won't work correctly. And then of course, if I did have an entry, then I could proceed to just go ahead and set everything else up and run Raven. So, all right. So I think that addresses Kenji's logic, or Kenji's question. And I'm just going to remove Raven. And I don't see any other questions that came in. So I'm kind of surprised. I'm sure somebody has some questions. Here we go. All right, so it looks like Kenji has a follow-up. When you have an entry signal trigger before 2-bar exit executes, entry trigger override 2-bar exit execution. Let's see. Kenji, could you kind of expand upon your question there? I need a little help here. So let me read this again. So when you have an entry signal trigger before a 2-bar exit, let's see, entry trigger override the 2-bar exit execution. Okay, so I think I'm following you here, Kenji. So let me kind of let me repeat back to you what I'm understanding. You can just give me a yes or no. So let's say, so we're looking at our exit signals, right? So we're going to have an exit. We're going to have an exit here. Let's see. I'll use the diamond here. So we'll have an exit here. And let's say, let me use the green dot as an entry. So we have this entry short right here, kind of just before we have an exit signal. And so you want essentially you want this exit to be overridden, or you don't want this exit to go through if your entry is, I guess, so many bars before the exit signal. Does that sound correct, Kenji? Let's see. Yes, so Kenji, so this green dot, right, is representing my short entry. So let's just say we had a short entry here, which is literally 1, 2, 3, 4 bars before the exit. So this diamond is representing the exit. So is that kind of what you're saying? That if we have an entry, so many bars before the exit, you don't want the exit to occur. Does that sound correct? So I'm just waiting for Kenji to give me a yes or a no confirmation here. Okay, so that's a yes. All right, so you know, I can, let's see, how about if we make something up real quick? All right, I think I can make something up real quick. And sorry guys, let me turn my Skype off. All right, so I'll make up a fictitious entry signal here. All right, so I'm going to create a new entry, and I'm going to make this. So I'm going to make this entry logic tailored specifically to this trend right here on the chart. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to make an entry that's, you know, waits for 12 bars in the same direction. And actually, instead of making a new logic, I'm going to delete that one, and I'm just going to copy this one. Not 5 bar, 12 bar. So I can save myself some time here, and all I have to do is put a 12 in there, and and bingo. And since this is a training workshop, I'll expand upon this so we can see that on the chart here, right, as soon as I get 12 bars in a row, we're getting long signals and short signals in the direction of the trend, or in the direction, yeah, of the bars, essentially. So I'm going to clean this up so that we just get one nice clean signal. So let's use the signal blocker. And so I'm going to set this, let's see, reset after to 50. So essentially, it's going to be blocking it's going to be blocking the signals for 50 bars, or until one of these conditions is true. So whichever of these reset conditions comes true first is when the signal blocker resets itself. So for example, let me set this back to 5. All right, that was the default setting. You can see that right, every 5 bars the signal blocker is resetting itself, and it's allowing one signal to come through again, and then it's blocking again, and then once again it allows a signal to come through after 5 bars, and then it's blocking again. So I'm going to set this to 50. So that looks like 50 is now blocking all of these down bars here, all the signals that were coming through. And what I also want to do is, let me adjust this here. So let's see, I can use, so when no signal is present, I can use that to reset. I think that works in this case. So when there's no signal coming into the signal blocker, that will reset it. But I'm not using the reset. I'm not using the reset connection here, so this really doesn't matter. It's not going to do anything. Alright, this reset signal or reset no signal is used for when you're using this reset connection right here, right? This reset connection, but we're not using that, so it doesn't matter. So I'll just turn it off. But here's one that I do want to use. So when I get an opposite signal coming in, I want that to reset the signal blocker. Alright, so let's take a look at. So we're looking at the signals that are coming into the signal blocker now. So if we look at the signal blocker, right, this input opposite signal, what this is doing is, if we're blocking these long signals, then this short signal is the opposite, right? This short is the opposite of the long. So when a short signal comes in, that's the opposite signal, and so that's going to reset the signal blocker. So that's kind of typically a good one to have left on. But also what's going to happen is that this no signal, right? So if we're blocking these long signals, on this first down bar, right, there's no long signal coming in anymore, so there's no signal. And so that will reset the signal blocker as well. So I guess this isn't really necessary, but typically I just leave it on. This is the one that really is going to be resetting the signal blocker first. So for example, right, if we're blocking these short signals coming through, then it's on this first up bar, right, there's no short signal anymore, and so that absence of a signal, or that no signal, will reset the blocking. So the signal blocker just gives us a nice clean looking entry signal. Alright, so there's our entry signal, and let's see. So now that we have an entry signal to work with, we can use this entry signal to override those exit signals. So let's zoom back into our workspace here. So this is kind of the area that we're going to use to work in, right here. There. All right. Give me just a moment. I need to get a drink of water here. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is, you can see I switched over to the exit logic. So we're going to have to modify this exit logic, right? Because that's what we're essentially wanting to do, is we're wanting to block these exit signals if our entry is so many bars within the exit signal. Let's see. So so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to rebuild the entry signal over here. Yeah, I'm going to have to rebuild that. So I'm just going to rebuild the entry signal over here. And Alright, so I believe that was it. Let me just take a look at the chart and we'll confirm that. That looks pretty correct. Alright, so we need to find a way for, let's see, this short signal to block essentially what's going to be this long signal. So let's kind of play around with a few ways to do that. Alright, let's test, let me test the logic, the toggle here. Let's see. No, I don't think I'm going to use the toggle. So I need, so Kenji, what's going to be a requirement is you're going to have to decide ahead of time, you know, how many bars before the exit signal. Okay, so how many bars from your entry signal here, from your entry signal, you know, how many bars in front of your exit signal, you know, do you want to override your exit logic? So I'm going to make a, you know, an arbitrary decision, and let's see, how about 5? So once again, well, I'm going to say 5. So if your entry signal happens 5 bars before your exit, then that will prevent the exit from happening. So I'm just going to make a decision there. And so I think in knowing that, I'm going to use, let's see, yeah, there's 2 ways I can do this, I believe. So I'm going to use this signal extender. So let me point out what I need to do. So conceptually, I need to take this short signal and I will need to extend it forward 5 bars. Extend it forward 5 bars so that it's overlapping the exit signal, or at least so it extend it forward 5 bars so that it's overlapping the bars that would create the exit signal. And let's see, so this is already, yeah, so this defaults to 5s, and yeah, so I just want to extend it forward 5 bars. Actually, how about if I change this and say 6 bars? And I'm just going to change it to 6 bars. So now I have basically I have an output here that I can use to block this exit signal. Right, so I can use that to block this exit signal. And let's see, how am I going to do that? Let's see. I can use, I'm thinking I'm going to use the if-then, this if-then node, programming node. But what I'm going to have to do is, all right, so keep in mind our exit logic is a long signal. And remember, this entry is a short signal. So I need to reverse this short into a long signal. So this short needs to become a long signal. So let's use the inverter here, and let's see, so swap. So to reverse stuff, we want to swap the long and short. Swapping long and short essentially is a reversal. And then we don't want to invert, so I'm going to turn that invert off, turn this invert off, and there we go. So now I just reversed the signals but I didn't invert them. So there's a difference between inverting and reversing. So this is reversing the signal, and let me give you an example of inverting. So let's take a look at the original. So remember, the original signal here, we have some shorts and some longs. So now if we take a look at the inversion, so here's the inversion. Alright, so the short signals that were here are missing, and all the other bars are short. But also, look, we have all these long signals as well, because the long signals that were not here were inverted. And remember, over here is where we did have those long signals, and now they're gone. So this is an inversion. This is inverting, whereas this is reversing the signal. And so remember, to reverse the signal, right? Essentially, you're just swapping the long and short, and you just have to remember to turn these inverts off. All right. So now that I have, so from this entry signal, from this entry short signal, I've now extended it so that it overlaps this exit signal that we want to cancel. And so what I can do is use the programmer node. So this signal coming out of the inverter that we're looking at, this is the signal that's going to be controlling the if-then. And think of the if-then as a switch. So the if-then switches between allowing, let's see, so we have the then input and the else input, right? So we have these two inputs here. You can see the leader going to. So this node is a switch. So let me get rid of that. So it's a switch that the output is either going to allow the then to come through, or the output is going to be switched to the else connection. So this output is always going to be switched to one of these two connection points. All right, so the output is always connected. It's always allowing one of these two connection points to go through to the output. And so let's see here. So when we have a signal, so remember, we have this long signal coming into the if. We have a long signal coming into the if. So when we have a signal coming in, the then connection is what's switched to the output. So let me connect this up. So you can see that the signal from this look back is coming through and through to the output, and that's why we're getting these two long signals. Right, and the long signals stop because what's happening, remember, on let me put a little dot here. Here. this is why I love this toolbar. So I can draw my signals on here. So when you kind of get into some advanced logic here, you can draw little nodes and dots and whatnots to give you a visual representation of your signals here. So we can see that, remember, these short signals that were coming in, these long signals that were coming in, as soon as they stop, right, that's why the output here stops, because the output is now switched over to the else. Since there's no long signal coming in, the else connection is switched to the output, and there's nothing connected to the else, so there's no output anymore. So what we want to do is, I want my exit. So remember, these guys represent my this point here represents my exit signals. Right, so these are all of our exit signals when we get two bars in the same direction. So I want those to actually go through to the else. And so what we can do is so now we're looking at the modified exit signal. So we can see now, instead of the exit signal occurring right on the second bar, it's waiting until let's see, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's waiting for 6 bars after the entry logic. Because remember, on the signal extender, I set it to extend forward 6 bars. So remember, this point here, right? This data here, this signal here, is what's controlling when the exit logic will show back up. So if I wanted to push, so if I wanted to give the trade a little more time to possibly allow price to reverse before I exit the trade, what I can do is I can push that signal out further. So I can say, push it out 10 bars. So if I enter short here, I can give the system, or essentially I can give price like 5 bars, I can give price 10 bars time to try and reverse and go in the right direction before my exit signal closes me out of the system. So now if I look at my exit signal, so now this exit signal is delayed by 10 bars based on whenever this short executes. So let's kind of take a look at some other areas on the chart here. Actually, okay, here's another place where I can show this example. So let's take a look at this entry. So we had this long entry here, and so if we take a look at our exit logic, right? So this is the exit, and so remember we pushed our exit logic off by 10 bars. So none of these down bars gave us an exit signal. They all got blocked for 10 bars. And then we can see that price just kept moving on. And then and then we can see over here our normal exit logic is occurring. So on the second down bar we got this exit signal, right? So here's our entry, and we did get another entry here, but since there was no exit, Raven would not have taken a second entry. Raven's only going to put you in the market once per direction. So this would not enter a second trade because there was no exit. Right, so if we take a look at the exit, so there was no exit that took place to exit this long signal. So Raven would not have gone long a second time over here. And then Raven would have exited your trade with this short signal here. So, all right, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this in Raven. Let's see. I'm going to make a copy of this and call this 2-bar. And we'll call it, say, it's with a entry, I guess an entry blocker, or entry override. Yeah. So this one will be with the entry override, and this other one I will just get rid of those, get rid of that, just put that back to normal. Alright, so I'm going to close out a BloodHound before I put this into Raven, and we'll take a look at some of these entry and exit signals on the chart. So let's load up Raven, and we'll load up that template. So there's that BloodHound file, and as I showed earlier, I like to take a look at the logic, right? I just like to make sure all the leaders look good, make sure it was left in the correct state. Let's see, that looks correct. So good. So I'm going to leave it on the 12 on the entry signal. Now I'll go in here and we'll put the entry logic on our entry logic and set the exit logic to, how about this 2-bar with entry override. And since we have an exit logic defined, I'm just going to leave the stop loss blank, and I'm going to leave the profit target empty, and we'll just turn this on, and just for demonstration purposes, we'll just take a look at the signals here, and let's see, text to marker, and hopefully you guys caught what I did wrong. So I I need to turn this off, and I forgot to turn backtest mode on. So let's turn that on, and we'll turn the strategy back on. And excuse me while I get some more water. Alright, so we can see here on this entry, right, we did not get, we didn't close the position out, so we didn't have an exit here on this reversal because it was too close to our entry, but we did close out here. And let's kind of scroll forward here. Alright, so here we go. So we had an entry, and it looks like more than 10 bars went by, and then boom, we exited on that second down bar in the opposite direction. And we can see here, right, we had the short entry, and then we didn't exit until 10 bars later. And then we had this long entry, and of course it immediately exited right on the close of that second down bar in the opposite direction. Right, so this exit logic worked normally. It was not overridden. All right, so there, Kenji. That was a neat question. That was a good question. I hope you guys liked that one and learned something from that. I'll back. Let's see. You know, here's a good practice. So, look, since I'm going to go muck around with the logic here, as good practice, you'll notice that I have two BloodHound files open, or I should say I have the same file. Right, I have the same file open twice, right, in two different instances of BloodHound. Right, so one of these instances of BloodHound is BloodHound that's added as an indicator. Right, so I have BloodHound that was added on here as an indicator, and this other BloodHound was added on from Raven as a strategy. So it's a good idea that if you're going to go work with your BloodHound file, it's good to, I recommend that you remove Raven first. Oops. So let's go into strategies, and I think it's a good idea to remove Raven first. So that way you only have the file open once, right? That's just good practice to do. Alright guys, have a good weekend, and I'll see y'all next Friday.